jobs and they're becoming realtors. They're jumping into real estate, but their first path is the least restrictive path. I don't have to spend any money outside of my licensing, and they're becoming realtors. And I fear that they're making a massive mistake at doing that leap right now, because you're literally becoming a realtor at the highest point the market's ever seen. And you're hoping that every house is going to continue to sell like it is now, that if you get a listing, it's flying off the market. It's a false sense of reality. What do you have to say about all these massive amounts of people leaving their jobs to become realtors, and they think this is going to be the sale, that's going to allow them to sail into the sunset?
It is interesting to think about that. I mean, in many ways, you look back over the past 14 years, which you were describing 2009. That was 14 years ago since we've had a correction in this market cycle. We should have had a correction at least in 2020, but we've had so much intervention by the Federal Reserve, and we've had so much paper over the problems that we've seen. We've created a bigger and bigger and bigger bubble in every asset class, not just real estate, in equities, in other assets. I mean, every asset that you can imagine is inflated in many regards. But you think about real estate, actually, that I think is one of the biggest, or has been one of the biggest, if not number one, Google search result or phrase has been becoming a realtor or getting my real estate license in whatever state you're located in. It's seen as the easy way to create money. And I'll tell you this, I mean, I can't imagine being in the residential real estate world. It would be absolutely maddening because you have so many people that have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea where we are in the historical context. And I think it's creating more and more bad hysteria. It's creating, people making bad decisions left and right in terms of, ultimately, I think one of the things that Robert Kiyosaki talks about is that a personal residence is not an asset. It's a liability. And what's happening is people are getting worse and worse advice from people who have no idea what they're doing. And they're buying properties for values that make absolutely no sense. And the hysteria is growing and growing and growing at a time when we're seeing bigger and bigger challenges. Of course, the low interest rate environment that we've seen over the last 12 years has supported sort of continued growth. But ultimately, what we're seeing now is that you're pushing more and more people out of the ability to purchase a primary residence because of, over the past 45 days, we went from 3% interest rates or less to 5.5% and sometimes 6% interest rates. So those monthly payments are going up tremendously. And I tell you what, I just don't think that many consumers out there have any idea what they're truly getting themselves into in a historical context. We're buying properties that are cash flowing. And of course, to your point, values have risen tremendously over the past 14 years. At the end of the day, it's, well, what are we looking at in terms of our dollar? What is our dollar worth today versus what it was worth 14 years ago? I can tell you that over the past 2 years, it's probably worth 40% less than it was before they injected about 40% of the money supply 2 years ago. And I'll tell you what, man, what the Fed is doing today is, it's very concerning. But at the end of the day, the Fed has made a lot of concerning moves over the past 12, 14 years and beyond. I think if anybody wants to understand really what's going on there, they need to read a book. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. And if you really want to understand the history of money, the history of the United States, the history of the world, you really need to understand that it's all driven by money. It's all driven by the central banks. And, this is no different. I mean, we're entering uncharted territory, but at the end of the day, if you're not educated based on where we are in a historical context, you could be making very bad decisions. And I think what you're getting at is that we have people who are advising, who basically are just trying to get out of their job and they're trying to make easy money, that are creating and making the problem even worse. So I think it's very concerning.
Oh, I think it's beyond concerning. And I unfortunately, I go out there and I talk about this stuff every day. People don't want to hear it. It's the truth, but the truth hurts and nobody wants to hear about it. And there's a book, a very good book from the late Stephen Arnio called Hard Times Create Strong Men. And in that book, he talks about this. He goes all the way back in time and he talks about, there was this colony and I'm not going to get into the specifics, but they always saw the light outside, but every time they'd go out and try to look at it, because they'd never seen the sun, they always feared the sun. And all the people would would shun people that tried to actually go up and see what was out there because it burned their eyes. And this one guy went up and he did it and it hurt his eyes, but eventually he just let it adjust and he saw the sun and he figured it all out. He figured out that was the source of energy, the source of life, the source of everything. But when he came back, he was basically bastardized for actually going out and trying to find the truth. And he never was able to tell the truth because they would have killed him, because the truth hurts. And all the truth is the sun won't kill you. It's the source of all energy. It's the source of everything that is alive and is well. But that would have resulted in him dying. And there's another person that came in to tell the truth named Jesus Christ. So you can also see, like, I'm not trying to get biblical on this stuff, but I want you to all understand that the truth hurts. Right now, the hard truth is the fact that the storm is coming. As a matter of fact, the storm is probably here now. And that is not going to be a pretty sight for many people. It's not going to be a good sight for all these people leaving their jobs, going into real estate as realtors, because eventually when the whole thing comes down, guess what? There will not be all these buyers willing to pay $50,000, $100,000 over ask, because that's just the norm right now. You look at a house, it's listed. We just listed one, $695. Like, we know that every realtor is going to advise their buyers, you're going to have to go at least 50,000 over that to even have a shot at winning this. That's ludicrous, but that's the world we live in. But a lot of people literally believe that that's the norm. Folks, that's not normal. That's stupid. That's what it is. But until stupid is, or until they figure it out, stupid is as stupid does, right? I guess that's what they say. But I mean, I just hate that too many people are going to have to learn the hard way. But Tyler, like, I guess that's how we learn, the hard way.
I guess that's true. I mean, it's interesting. I think ultimately it does come down to financial intelligence. We have to understand not only the historical context, what's actually going on in the economy, the movers, the levers, the different complexities, because ultimately everything is connected. One of the things that I've just been more and more fascinated with over the past few years is those interrelated complexities. You see the things that are going on in Ukraine. You see the things that are going on with the Fed. You see the things that are going on with oil prices, gold, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, what's going on in terms of interest rates, what's going on with sort of the fundamentals of the renter nation. I mean, you talk about people that were either in the, hey, we're renters by necessity or renters by choice. There's all these things. You talk about migration, whether it's domestically, internationally, all of these things are interconnected, but it comes down to financial intelligence. If you have no financial intelligence, you have no idea that you may be making a very detrimental move in a time that could be extremely challenging and chaotic. And, we look back to 2009, 2008, you look back even further, 2001, you look back even further. I mean, there's so many different times in history, but what we're looking at now is perhaps an economy that's been propped up. It has been propped up to a much higher exponential degree than it ever has in the past. And, you think about guys like Peter Schiff as an example. He talks about the real crash. He's like, look, we saw a crash in 2008, 2009, but he's like, the real crash is coming. And it's something for us to understand. But if you have no financial intelligence, you have no capacity to understand that ultimately we are all players in this game. And so what moves are you making that could drastically change your future? And I think I don't know if this country has been designed to really give no one financial intelligence, but the fact of the matter is, you have to go get it. And so if you're listening to this podcast, if you're in this type of community, you're obviously in that ballgame, but you can't stop there. You have to get in the game. You have to learn. You have to make decisions. You have to surround yourself with other people. You have to ask questions. You have to consider the fact that every move could either be dangerous. It could be, it could be a great opportunity. When I think of debt, when I think of putting $30+ million on a deal, in terms of, financing, that's a double-edged sword. In many regards, it can leverage our returns. It can amplify our opportunity. It can amplify our cash on cash. It can amplify our internal rate of return or our ROI. But at the same time, it can be extremely detrimental. That sword cuts both ways. That comes down to the same thing. If you're going to take action in this market, that sword cuts both ways. So you have to be ready to fail. And when you fail, recognize that it's not fatal, but it is feedback. And so when you get knocked down, you have to get back up. And if you make mistakes that seem detrimental, it comes down to what conversation are you having between your ears? Because, man, I don't know about you, but the most successful people that I know have had some of the most massive failures that you could ever have imagined. So yes, we will get knocked down. A lot of us will lose a lot of money, right? That it may happen here in this next crash, right? I think we may be experiencing it right now. But the question is, are you going to stay in the game for the long term? Because I know for sure in real estate, and I know for sure being your own banker, it's about uninterrupted compound interest, and it's about being a part of this game for the long term. So we have to recognize that market cycles are a part of this entire trajectory. This one may be a very, very chaotic one. It may be a very severe one, but there will be an expansion on the back end. And so it's a matter of, can you stay in the game? Can you arm yourself with intelligence, financial intelligence, emotional intelligence, leadership intelligence, and so forth to continue to push forward, to continue to be in the game?